Welcome back to the latest episode of Last Week with India AI. I'm Sindhuja and I'm joined by my colleague Jibu. Together, we bring to you every week the latest news, analysis, and insights from the world of AI. Hi, Jibu, and
Hi
welcome.
Santuja. Yes, Santuja. How are you? How was your
I'm
week?
very well. It's been a good week. It's been a very newsworthy week. I think I've been quite
Yes.
busy. I didn't even realize how the week has sort of come
I
to
think
an
a lot
end,
of
and we're into another weekend again.
there's a saying in tech journalism, right? I mean, not tech journalism. I will say consumer electronic journalism that October they call it Techtober.
That's true. It is Techtober, and I think it's going to be a very tech-heavy November as well. A lot of very big, events and a lot of great updates happening in the world of AI. So I think it's going to be a Tech November and a Tech December, and it's going to be a Tech 21 as well, for all you know, looking at the way things are.
So I mean, there is a lot of development happening in terms of research. I think this is the part of the year you will see a normally a spike in research. The summers are quite, considering the nature of academic schedules in
Hmm.
European and US universities, right? Summer
Yeah.
are more of a vacation area, and then I'll come back to the research labs, universities, and then they start doing their work through the fall till
Hmm.
Christmas happens. So I think we are seeing many developments, so many papers published, and things like that over the next last few weeks as a result of this.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think it's also been a very interesting year, I feel, when it comes to the way AI is. I mean, we are pretty much in the last quarter. October is almost over. We're in fact pretty much done with the last quarter, I think, in another couple of months. And I think a lot of focus this year was in the first few months, AI wise at least, was in terms of trying to propagate more the use of AI for healthcare for understandable purposes. I mean, we had one of the biggest crises on hand healthcare wise, to manage, and this was not just India, this was across the world. And if anything at all, as a result, we've seen some really really interesting stories, some very interesting solutions come out, and more importantly, we've seen some very agile companies turn around, very quickly, make the most of this remote work situation to ensure that solutions can be delivered and deployed and used. So it's been a for me. I think this year I think has been the age of or rather a time of reckoning for healthcare and AI to really come together. But I think, and that's kind of sort of become a time where it's sort of taking I wouldn't say a backseat, but it's sort of becoming a part of the bigger picture right now. So the National Digital Health Mission was launched, was announced on August, and now I believe the Health ID is also one that has actually started being rolled out as a pilot project in union territories. So pretty soon, Jibu, all our states are going to be having programs where health IDs are going to be rolled out, and definitely there will be the use of AI, to ensure this is happening. But it's also time to sort of start moving the needle towards other industries and see where else, AI can really be applied.
I remember you did some interesting stories this week. I mean, now that we are back from race and back to our old, day-to-day, high octane activities.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. In fact, that's glad you mentioned it because this is an interview I had done actually well before Raise, but I just never had the chance to put it down pen to paper and really start writing the story, or rather fingers to keypad in today's day and age. No more pen to paper. I can barely write anymore.
I
And
think that's a
with
part where the one of the part of a writer or a journalist's life where people don't realize is not doing the interview, but
oh
writing the
yeah,
interview is the hardest part, right?
oh it is
You will
it
have
is
a video,
difficult.
audio recording. I know I've been doing it all wrong till you kind of corrected my errors, right? I used to record the whole interview, then listen to it, then no, not listen to it, then I transcribe the whole interview, then I take edit that story, then I add my input, then that's how my process used to be. But then after you told me like take the points while the interview is happening,
Yeah.
then don't transcribe the whole thing, just write down what is important from the audio.
Yeah, yeah, no,
That
no, these
saves
are
a lot of money, but still
saves you a lot of
time.
time,
Sorry.
especially
Yep.
when you're doing a lot of stories. If it's you're doing like a once in a while story, that's fine. But this method, I think, is important. I wish there was an AI to help us do this, speech to text rapidly for
I did
reporters. That
try.
would be
I
really
did
cool.
try. So Google Docs AI works pretty much decently, but the problem is when it's an audio recorded, it has so
Yeah,
many muffled parts.
yeah.
even when we talk also, right? We interrupt each other, so that kind of things are there.
Yeah, true.
And the accent also, come on, like my accent is so Mallu that you need a different data set to be trained on. So
No, it's just a matter of getting used to, I think.
yeah,
Now I'm very comfortable. So I can understand exactly when you're
okay,
going to
that's very
stop and
comforting to
start. And
hear.
don't worry, I think
So
our
let
listeners
me
will do this well.
hear about your interview. Let's hear about what
Yeah,
your
so
interview.
I had the chance to speak with a very distinguished, very senior, executive at Saskin. His name is Amit Verma. He's a senior solutions architect for the AI portfolio. And for all those who are wondering out there about Saskin, it's one of those companies that actually made a play in product development as early as the 90s, and this is around the time when NASCOM itself was actually being formed and was becoming popular and was becoming that industry body that was representing IT and IT services. Here was a company headed and founded by Indians, which was extremely bullish about the product segment, and said, you know what, we think that India has all the right ingredients to become a leader in the product space. And 30 years in, and Saskin is one of the leaders in R&D and innovation, in especially sectors like industrials, heavy industries, automotive, and consumer electronics. So what's interesting to see is that a company like Saskin has always sort of kept their eye on trying to keep abreast and ensure that they are absolutely ahead of the curve when it comes to the latest innovations. And there is a very, very seamless blend of hardware and software really happening, which is what I think makes them one of the more reliable names in the industry when it comes to technologies, especially in the areas of 5G, autonomous driving. These are the areas where Saskin is really known, for their quality and product of expertise, and not just within India, but in fact they have clients across the world, especially in countries like Japan, several countries in Europe, even the United States. So it was great talking to Mr. Verma. He's like I said, leading the AI portfolio for Saskin. And I think one of the things that he said which really stood out was the fact that he said it was a long-standing industry expertise that Saskin has always had in chip technologies. So the leap or the move to cognitive solutions was a natural one. I mean, these were the guys that were very, very proficient with hardware. So for them to actually move over to machine intelligence was something which was like a natural course and progression. So and I also told him, I said, I think it's important that companies like this continue to stay innovative and creative, because without that, no technology company can really honestly survive, no matter how old you are or no matter how young you are. You just have to keep innovation at your core. And I think that's what's really happening here. I think we spoke especially about the work that's happening in automotive driving and autonomous solutions for vehicles. So they are doing a lot of work in the areas, and they've developed a lot of solutions for sections like driver drowsiness, traffic sign recognition, forward collision warning, etc. And they're using a lot of technologies like deep learning neural networks, image processing, and so on and so forth. They've even started doing a lot of POCs in voice-enabled security commands and voice recognition, NLP, and so on. These solutions are being used in, like I said, in various countries, and especially Japan is also one particular country, a market that is really good for them. And it's not just that. In fact, he also mentioned, interestingly, at CES, which is the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas, which is one of the biggest shows for consumer electronics globally. They in fact were able to showcase a solution wherein it's an end-to-end prototype of a smart refrigerator with a smart panel developed completely by the Saskin team, and this allows your users to know what items are located inside the fridge, in addition to telling you what quantity is left. So it'll also give you the data in terms of what kind of serving suggestions are there. So it'll just say, there's like half a tub of ice cream left, so you can probably serve like 3 people and not 6 people if you thought that you can actually serve ice cream to so many. So it's tech like this that they're working on. They're trying to make this AI as an offering which is very front and center to what they do in a range of sectors, especially in automotive and home appliances, smart consumer electronics, and definitely heavy industries as well. So these are the areas where I feel Saskin is very very aware and a very today A sort of a company. They also say that, of course, COVID has been a very definitive moment for them. And if anything, it has reinforced their belief that they are on the right track and they have to continue innovating on this track, because this is where the future is, especially when it comes to working in areas like healthcare and manufacturing, where the use of AI is going to be extremely critical, without which I think, you cannot go back to the old factory. The factory of the future is going to be dominated by AI. And you've got companies like Saskin that are really sort of powering that innovation and keeping hardware and product in mind while doing that, I think is extremely critical to this entire journey that companies like this are doing. So I found that interview to be very interesting, lot of takeaways, and I'm hoping to showcase a little more in terms of what Saskin is doing in the coming weeks. But I'll keep you all posted if I get some more interviews with some of the senior leaders.
That's very interesting, Sundar. I mean, one of the things I think we will be heading, India as a economy will be heading into is hardware manufacturing, right?
Absolutely.
Like considering what is happening with China and US and
Yeah.
the loss of trust in China. I mean, we have seen the case with Huawei and other companies, but on the other hand, India is like we are the biggest democracy in the world, and we provide more transparency, and our way of doing is much, much, much different from that of China, and that's gonna improve our opportunities in hardware making, especially AI and IoT and things like that. It's interesting, and there is so many advancement also happening, from whether it's hardware or software. Like we said, it's tech October, but that's only apply for actually smartphones and things like that, right?
Yeah.
So many smartphones coming out in October, right? iPhone and things like that. So, but one of the interesting development in the area of AI that caught my attention recently was this concept called low short learning. So it's LO, the LO short learning. So as we know, right, the current AI development or the AI we celebrate is an it's a product of machine learning and deep learning, right? Because of the data and learning from this data has been, initially there were many other approaches, going back to 1960s, like expert system and the systems and neuro symbolic systems, things like that. But the real development happened when we started focusing on deep learning and things like that. Now, the problem with this deep learning technology and machine learning, as we all know, is it requires a lot of data.
Yeah.
Right. True. And we speak about data. We speak about data as the new oil, or data as the new water, as people like Vala Afshar points out. But the question is, it requires a lot of data. It's not like you can show an ML algorithm like 2 pictures of a cat and expect it to understand a cat, right? You need to train it on like thousands of data sets. So what is happening is this has created a challenge within this sphere, that is, it is very expensive, right? Getting this data. There are so many data sets out there which are public, but not all the data sets are available public. Some of the data sets are very narrow, right? For example, like the other week we spoke about Niramaya. Their training data set should be very, very narrow. It's about it scans the cancerous cells in a in breast tissue and things like that. So that's a very narrow and niche data sets, right?
Yeah.
So accessing these data sets is difficult, right? That's one challenge. And then the whole training process is very computational heavy and power hungry process. And this is the reason why many people like Gary Marcus comes out and say, going forward, that dependence on deep learning and machine learning won't be a sustainable option. That's another school of thought. Yeah. Now, what is happening is interesting is a couple of researchers from University of Waterloo. They have been doing some interesting work for many years now. So they created this low short learning method. So now let's look at we know that deep learning and machine learning is kind of developed based on humans learning process, right? Neural networks are pretty much inspired by our own neuron structures. But if you take a kid, right, like if you take a 1-year-old or a 2-year-old kid and tell that kid, right, okay, see that animal there, that's a horse. Okay, you show it once, you show it twice, then that kid will, or that person, when will remember that for most of their lives, right?
Right.
You don't need more than that. But in case of AI, you had to like show hundreds of data, so the host, not host, not hot host, not host. I mean, so that's the problem, right? And so again, there is another way also, right? Okay, let's assume there's a kid who has seen a rhino and has seen a horse, but has seen a pony. Now, how do you explain a unicorn to that kid, right? You can tell, okay, unicorn looks like a pony. I mean, it's a fictional animal, but it's a national animal of Scotland.
Yeah.
So, yeah, a unicorn looks like a horse with a horn like rhino. So we have that ability. I mean, there are things that we haven't seen or experienced in real life. We can
Yeah.
kind of understand what it looks like, or
Correct.
you can when you say it, you can recognize it. Now,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think we are there yet in terms of bringing that to the machines, but this is an attempt in that direction. So the whole low shot actually stands for less than one shot. So there's a paper which was recently published by this brilliant minds in University of Waterloo, and they are working on some of the data sets like the MNIST data set, which has 60,000 images of written digits from 0 to 9. So they're using their data set. Now they are trying to have the second approach, the one I said, how you say the unicorn, describe a unicorn to someone. So what they're doing is, for example, take the number 3. Okay, number 3 has a shape which is kind of close to 8, right? I mean, if you say, and it also has similar relationship with other digits, maybe like 0. So
Right.
what this algorithm does is soft labels, and try to capture these shared features between different digits. So instead of telling a machine like, okay, this digit, right, this is number 3, in this system it says, see, this figure is 60% number 3, 80%, 30% it is 8, and 10% it is 0.
Oh, okay. Got it.
So,
Right.
so it's like showing a unicorn and saying, hey, this is 80% horse, pony, and 20% rhino. I mean, that's a very bad example, but that's
It
the only thing that
works.
came to, yeah, it works. That came to my mind. So the idea is to let the AI figure out, like, okay, like learn like a child, or how we learn.
Literally
So
form cognitive concepts from scratch, basically.
exactly. So I think that in a way kind of solves the requirement for a lot of data sets. But this has a lot of challenges. I mean, this is a concept right now, and the researchers are using the one of the classification algorithms like K nearest neighbors algorithm, and they are using it to understand the difference between like. I mean, this kind of you have been marking these things, and they're using that algorithm to bifurcate new data points, and represent one or the other based on which side of the line they fall, right? Based on like how close it is to, like we said about number 3, right? That figure is 60% closer to number 3, 30% closer to number 8, something like that, right?
Okay.
So it's still a very early state, and they are still also utilizing this concept to develop further by creating series of tiny synthetic data sets which are they're soft labeled. So synthetic data sets are data sets which are created by machines in itself when there is shortage of real data sets.
Got it. Yeah.
So these are the things happening, and this seems like a very interesting way of going forward. And this is built on several ideas of works that have been happening in many years. But I feel it is in the right way. I mean, it is very early stage, but further down the line, this can be, if developed properly, it can be a game changer.
Yeah, I can, because you're essentially sort of teaching a machine to learn with as minimal cues as possible. So if it can actually perfect that, then we're really looking at the dawn of artificial general intelligence, AGI, really becoming more mature. Because that's I mean, if it's domain specific, we all know how absolutely path-breaking artificial intelligence can be. But if it's domain general, is when there's so much more to be done, because I just feel like that's an unparalleled experience when it comes to human cognition. But low shot seems to be, I think, one of the first steps towards that. So I think that'll be very interesting to see in the few years if they can actually manage to harness enough and more of these generic data sets to actually make this to be like a foundation for general intelligence to thrive.
Yeah, but speaking of AIG, somebody was, I mean, I remember, yep, there is a paper published in Nature's Humanities and Social Sciences Communications, right? I think it was published a few months ago. A whole article is there by Ragnar and Phelan on why general artificial intelligence won't be realized. But it will be an interesting read, to know different perspective. But then again, you have totally different work happening in the other side. Like now we are teaching robots to feel the pain and heal, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it is that's another research from Singapore, and that's I mean, I was first like I was like, okay, that's ridiculous. Why you want to the whole idea of machines advantages, they don't have human emotions, they don't get tired like humans, right? They don't
Yeah.
need the 8 hours sleep, or they don't get sick. I mean, of course, there's maintenance and breakdowns, but now we are, the guys at the researchers and scientists at the Nanyang Technical University in Singapore, right? They are developed an AI-based brain for robots. So this gives them ability to sense pain and heal themselves when damaged. So it's like when you have a cut and you feel the pain, and the blood start clotting and the human tissue heal itself. So this the according to the people who worked on the paper, I think Professor Arindam Basu, at the School of Electrical and Electronic Engineering at the university, he was like pointing out that for robots to work together with humans one day, one of the concern is how to ensure they will interact safely with us, right?
Yeah.
I
True.
mean, for example, the safety of us, I mean, our body can only tolerate a certain level of heat, right? For example, right? But otherwise human tissue will get burned.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what's the temperature threshold, but now you look at some of the alloys and metals based off titanium, right, and things like that, right? Or even ceramic itself, right? They have a tolerance threshold of like exponentially higher than anything human tissue can have, right?
Right.
You build a spacecraft, which need a higher has to withstand a higher temperature when it enters human Earth atmosphere and things like that. So now you have a robot made out of let's say titanium alloy and a human working side by side. Now for the robot, what is safe? If there's a fire happening, and for robot, what's safe may not be what's safe for a human, right? Like by the time robot is working, and realizing, okay, this fire is really bad, but by the time human might have perished. So that's the whole reason. And the scientists around the world has been like trying to find a way to bring a sense and awareness to robots, such as being able to feel the pain, to react to it, and to withstand, like I said, harsh operating conditions. Now, the complexity of putting together these sensors, of course, is a very difficult process, and the fragility of system is another barrier for adopting something like that. Now, this system has different sensors and nodes that are which is connected to an AI algorithm, and this node reacted to pain and process pain by calculating the force of impact or pressure. I mean, that's something like we do, right? If somebody hits you, they tap you, don't feel pain, but if somebody taps you hard, you feel more pain, right? It's like the force of impact and pressure, right? So this is what's happening, and the robots also have a self-healing gel, which is an ion gel material. It enables the robot to repair its mechanical functions without human interventions if it gets injured from a sharp cut or something like that. Oh boy, we are building Skynet.
I was just thinking that literally. I mean, I think it's good that machines can, I wouldn't say self-heal, I mean self-detect and repair their damages, so to speak. I think that also sort of limits having a technician come over every time there's some kind of a technical glitch. But to actually feel pain like how we do, I don't know. I'm not really sure if we're really enabling them to develop novel systems, or are we just sort of translating what we know onto them and expecting the same sort of a thinking to sort of progress and go further. So that, I don't know, in my opinion, that just doesn't feel like it's a lot.
So Sindhuji, have you heard about this thought experiment called the brain in a watt? Have you heard about that?
No, I haven't. Tell me more.
Okay, so it's like a human brain, right? Brain, functioning human brain on life system. Just a brain, nothing else is there, right?
Okay.
It's kept on a watt, jar in a lab. And by applying the right electrical pulses and signals, it can feel everything. I mean, everything we feel, the things, say, when I look forward, I see my laptop screen, right? When I move my hand towards left, I can feel the coffee mug sitting next to me, right?
Right.
Everything is electrical pulses sent to our brain, and
Yeah.
that being identified, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a whole movie, Source Code, the movie called Source Code. Jake Gyllenhaal was starring in it. The movie is
Mhm.
about him going into a simulation, trying to save a train from a bomb explosion. And in the end, it shows like this guy is, and he's almost dead. He has no consciousness. I mean, but his brain functions, but his body only has the upper half. Yeah, he's kept in a
Okay.
facility like that.
Okay. Okay.
So everything is in the end, everything we feel, we experience, and we enjoy. The things are all the reality we perceive itself is just the electrical signals that are coming to our brain, and that's why many people says we might be living in a simulation. Like
Mm.
Matrix, right? It's so. I don't know how far robots will get there, but it's in a way it feels quite unsettling, but at the way also the technological development is exciting. But again, this is like very early stage. I mean, neuromorphic computing is it's catching up. I mean, and it will some way open new doors for creating robots that can mimic human neurobiological functions. Like the
Yeah.
Joel Oswald's character in the movie Artificial Intelligence.
Yeah, absolutely. No, we've opened it's like a door that you really can't shut, We've really sort of opened the door to so many possibilities when it comes to innovating with AI. So I just think that at some point there will be certain checks and balances to see what kind of technology and how much technology should be used and where we need to sort of draw a line at just experimentation and not actually have it like a mass deployment, for societies to thrive on. But yeah, it's definitely a very different future we're moving towards, and we're moving towards it very fast.
But on the other side, the advancement that's been happening in the areas of healthcare to one example, right? I mean, there are many things happening. Like for example, a few days back, the MIT researchers worked on an algorithm that tried to recover some of the lost languages, right?
Mm.
Deciphering ancient dead languages. I mean, see, as an Indian, we are all proud about the great Harappan culture. The Indus Valley
Mm.
civilization. Or I mean, now we call it Harappan culture. Back then, you used to call it Indus Valley civilization. So I mean, the naming is changed based on the first site that was discovered. So what is happening there is, we know it was a very sophisticated civilization, cosmopolitan culture. They had perfectly laid drainage systems.
Yeah.
Standardized bricks, all these systems, which took another couple of hundreds of years again to appear in India's historical continuity.
Right.
But we don't know a lot about them. For example, what religion we're following, or what kind of administration governance they had. That's
Mm.
all because we are still unable to decipher the language, right? The
Yeah.
Harappan script is I mean, from the time of John Marshall and Mortimer Wheeler, it still remains untranscribed. And I think this is I mean, as a historian myself, these kind of things kind of fascinates me. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
Let's hope. So that's one way in which AI is helping. But on the other hand, healthcare is an area where, I mean, I think we have spoken a lot of it, where
Yeah.
constant innovation is happening with
Yeah.
AI, and that's something very promising and to be honest, very optimistic to look forward to.
Yeah, like I mentioned in the beginning of this podcast, I think this year really has just been so much about trying to bring AI and healthcare together, and I think we've seen a fair amount of success and a fair amount of problems being solved. But I think what we're moving into the future is something that this particular startup that I profiled this week is really going to address. And I'm sure we've all had some level of experience with this particular very difficult topic called insurance. Health insurance is something that you can't live with and you can't live without. So I mean, and there's no joke on the irony here. You need health insurance, but it's not as easy as it sounds. More often than not, we've heard a lot of stories of how people are not able to claim the insurance that they paid for, or there are some kind of lapses where the hospital really can't process your paperwork, or they can't find your paperwork. So it's not really that kind of a time. It's a very hairy situation to be in, when a loved one is in pain and in trouble and needs medical intervention, and that's not the time you should be worrying about money, and it's not a situation anybody should be in. So this is where I think a company like Artivatic, which was in fact the winner of the Race 2020 Startup Challenge in the AI and healthcare and insurance category, they are making a huge difference when it comes to the application of AI in a specific domain of healthcare, which is really the delivery of insurance. So in fact, it's a very interesting time for them to have come to fruition. Last year, when Ayushman Bharat was scaled and launched in a big way, they were aiming to provide and help Indians, more than 500 million Indians, get insurance. And today, the National Digital Health Mission, which was announced in August, is actually going to be modeled on the federated IT architecture that is powering Ayushman Bharat. And a very big component of that is really going to be the insurance delivery side of things. And this is exactly where AI can really come in. So Artivatic is basically an asset-light insurtech and health tech platform that provides an end-to-end life cycle that's completely focused on products, solutions, and APIs using artificial intelligence, machine learning, and a lot of data. So it does everything from risk assessment, fraud intelligence, smart underwriting, claim servicing, and branch servicing, in addition to, of course, sales, marketing, and other customer acquisition functions. So this is done completely through a set of 200 APIs. And there are like 6 core products that are responsible for making these services available to clients and customers. In fact, specifically, there is one particular product called Darwin, which was the winner for in Race 2020 for the particular category that they applied for. And this is a insurtech and health tech ecosystem that's really completely built for the patient, provider, and payer. And it connects hospitals and providers through a unique platform where they basically have an access to patient data based on which they can build risk analysis, enable file claims, OPD expenses, and even sync up with health card data and more. So this system really connects, like I said, via a network of several APIs to multiple systems and can extract all of that data that is necessary for a person to actually process their claims and process their insurance paperwork without wasting a lot of time and getting caught in this quagmire of paperwork and bureaucracy and red tape. So it's a very patient first and patient forward approach, which I think is very important, because I think when you start building these solutions, keeping the patient in mind in this particular case, or in this case maybe the loved one in mind, I think that is something which will really make a difference in terms of the technology that can be scaled. End of the day, this tech is meant to help people, and if solutions are not developed keeping those very core elements in mind, then the longevity really is something that suffers. So Artivatic is doing a lot of work in this particular area. They're working with a lot of partners in various states in India as well, to scale this solution. And if they've fallen onto the radar of the government by having won the Race 2020 challenge, I'm really hoping that they get more opportunities to work very closely with the government to scale this, especially to rural areas, which is where I think the insurance claims and insurance management is something that requires a lot more intervention than, say, urban pockets like where you and I stay.
I think a completely interesting way. I think health insurance is one of the complicated affairs of healthcare, right? I mean, don't let me start as US elections are approaching. Don't let me get started on the health sector, insurance sector in US. Okay, it's a debate of every election, I think, for the time I can remember. But I mean, it's very interesting to see all the startups that were featured in the Race 2020, right? Artivatic was there, Ghani AI was there, many of them, and many of them are like moving into a success, as a result of Race 2020. One example is the platform Hubilo, right? I think I'm saying it right.
Yeah.
So it is a platform. Yeah, Hubilo. It's a platform on which the whole Race 2020 was broadcasted. And they recently got a good, a very impressive, sizable investment from Lightspeed Ventures, right? I mean, it's very interesting. I mean, Lightspeed is one of the prominent investors, right? You got Oyo, Byju's, and everything being invested by Lightspeed. So that's one way, like how these initiatives from the government and the India AI in generally brings all the startups to the limelight, and it's a good thing to hear how these startups are progressing as well.
True. It's like I said, it's a very, I wouldn't normally like to call COVID as, one of those definitive years. It's definitely been a very tough time, and it continues to be a tough time for many. But specifically when it comes to technology, it has been a year of multiple revelations. I think if anything at all, the more fortunate ones have been able to leverage very many aspects of this kind of technology and use it for the better. And I think as we're heading out of this year, and as we sort of, drawing the curtains down on 2020. My sincere hope is that, the difficulties of this year are past, and the lessons are something that we can take forward into 2021. And, all of these learnings when it comes to the application of AI in areas like healthcare and manufacturing and, retail and so many others, which has sort of helped us maintain and continue this way of life that we've sort of built for ourselves right now, work from home remotely all these months and just sort of live out of our houses. It's something that I don't think is going to end in the foreseeable future. And the only way it's going to continue as seamlessly as possible is the application of technologies like this. So I think it's there are many interesting developments in this particular space. It's a very exciting time really for startups and for innovators to be around. And I think I was reading somewhere how in 2009, which was right after the subprime crisis in the US, was when some of the biggest companies today were launched, like Uber and Airbnb.
True.
So what 10 years later, well,
Necessity is the mother of invention.
Inventions, yeah. And if this is going to be another definitive year, hopefully we're going to find more companies like this that are actually making solutions that make a difference. And it's not just going to be about trying to connect people. I think we're moving forward in terms of an ecosystem where we've managed to achieve connecting people. Now we're going to really try and figure out how these people can actually help each other. So that's going to be something that I think AI is going to be very front and center of.
Yes, happen. And for more innovation and more, research happening or everything happening in India and around the world, you should definitely check out indiaai.gov.in, and we are on top of everything.
So, yeah, we are.
Yep. So that's from us from this week, Sindhuja. I will see you again next week. Have a great weekend to you, and have a great weekend to everyone else.
Thank you, Jibu, and see you very soon. Stay safe, everyone. Thanks for tuning in.